You're listening to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Andrew Stillwell, and I am joined this week by one of Coaster101's newest writers, Evan Scharf. Evan, welcome back to the Coaster101 podcast.
Hey, Andrew, thanks for having me. Great to be back with you.
I know it was a couple of weeks ago or a couple episodes ago, depending on. It was more than a couple of weeks, but it was only a couple episodes ago because, again, real life gets in the way. But you came on. We talked a little bit of Busch Gardens Tampa. And so if you have not listened to that episode yet, go back, hear Evan's thoughts and hear John's thoughts and hear my thoughts on all things Busch Gardens Tampa. But Evan, I wanted to have you on this week because you had the opportunity to not only attend a media day for, one of the country's newest and most exciting roller coasters. Some might call it a sleeper hit. In the past week, you have also ridden one of the country's most infamous roller coasters. And I'm just going to, we'll leave it there for now. Let the people guess. But, you recently visited one of your home-ish parks. I know you're up in the Northeast, Dorney Park, for the media day for their new B&M dive coaster, Iron Menace. So let's go ahead and get your thoughts on that. I mean, first of all, what's your personal history with Dorney Park? I was reading your review on Coaster101.com. Again, if you're listening, we have a website, Coaster101.com. Go read Evan's thoughts on his review after you listen to this podcast. But, Evan, what's your personal history with Dorney?
Yeah, so I would definitely consider Dorney one of my home parks. Being from New Jersey, I have Great Adventure about 45 minutes away, Dorney an hour-ish, Hershey's a bit further than that, about 2 hours, and then Busch Gardens, and then all the smaller parks, Lake Compounds, Coney Island. It's really a great spot to be located in the Northeast, and Dorney is one of those parks that seem to kind of miss the mark when it comes to getting new attractions that were bringing guests, and you'd have Six Flags and Hershey hitting home runs with their new coasters, and then here we are 19 years later, and Dorney finally gets a brand new coaster.
I know, and it's crazy to think about. And I know we had Ryan Eldridge from Dorney on the podcast a couple of weeks ago as well. Actually, longer than a couple episodes, I think like 10, 12 episodes ago. But yeah, this is the first new coaster at Dorney Park from the ground up since Hydra the Revenge. And we can include Possessed in there, which is still running and kicking. We can include Stinger. But as we all know, those were, little transfer, just bring the old coaster and kind of a re-theme it, new and exciting hand-me-down coaster a little bit. But, what do you think it is about Iron Menace that makes it the perfect coaster for Dorney Park and kind of tells that story of the steel, the industry in the area? What is it about Iron Menace that you think makes it so perfect for Dorney Park?
I mean, I think it's the complete package. You got a lot of the rides in this area, they're really missing that theming, and the closest that you can get to good theming is probably Busch Gardens, and that's a 7-hour drive. So when you have a ride like Iron Menace that not only opens a new coaster, it opens up a whole new area of the park, the Steel Yard. So you have everything from new dining options, new shopping options. They rethemed one of their flat rides, MT Buckets. Mm-hmm. So just putting in that new ride into, I don't really want to call it a cursed plot of land, but it was something that was kind of a forgotten area of the park. And now you have the best area of the park because you're a 5-minute walk from Steel Forest, Thunderhawk, Possessed. Everything is right there.
Right. Yeah, it's been... I think I was last at Dorney Park in 2013 or 2014, and it was my only time I've ever been. And it was a park to me that had so much kind of charm. It had that, I know it's an old, trolley park, and there's not a lot of those that are left these days, but it was a park that has a lot of character. And I think with this new Steel Yard area and Iron Menace and all the retheming, I think the name MT Buckets is hilarious for their flying scooters. But with this backstory with this Hiram McTavish and McTavish Steel, which is a direct competitor to, I think, Bethlehem Steel, which is a real steel company in the area, I think Cedar Fair recently has kind of been telling these stories with the roller coasters, and even with, Top Thrill Dragster and CP Racing or Copperhead Strike and Bird Farm. They're all starting to kind of tell these stories. And, what were your first thoughts upon, like, again, you've got some familiarity with this park. It's what you called a forgotten area. Walking towards it, what were your first impressions?
I mean, just it's a stunning ride to look at, especially its proximity to 78. So you'll have people that are going to Hershey and ironically pass Dorney Park and be like, "Oh my God, this is this crazy new ride. Let me go ride it." So I think that's the first thing that really stuck out to me is you'd have to drive past it when you're going for parking. So it's just like a huge eye-catching moment. I know that dive coasters are huge with the GP. It's just something that they could stand under and look at for hours, and that's definitely something that I saw as a benefit in my eye because a lot of that park has people that go to the water park and they kind of look at it gets so hot in there in the summer, so they kind of look at the theme park as almost a secondary park and something to do maybe when they finish the water park, maybe when they first get there. So I think at least my experience being there on those hot summer days and loving those station waits when everybody's in the water park, I think that this ride will definitely help with bringing people back into the theme park and getting on the coasters.
Yeah, I made that drive. I actually drove up. My wife's family is from Long Island, and we made a drive up 2 Christmases ago, and you can see Dorney Park from the highway, and you can see it, pretty clear. And this is before they had even broken ground on Iron Menace, so I can't imagine. Well, I can't imagine. I've seen pictures, but I can't imagine like how drastically the park skyline has changed. Um, Let's talk a little bit about the ride experience, though. I know you go through this again. There's the story, kind of I think it was called the mystery behind the menace or the myth behind the menace. Kind of gives a little backstory to the whole area. But is the queue heavily themed? Is it all, what's the queue experience like before you get to the ride?
Yeah, so the queue is awesome. It really adds a lot of character to the ride. It's not just a dive coaster; it's a whole experience. So you walk into McTavish Steel, which I think is great because the sign for Iron Menace is about probably 20 to 30 feet from the actual entrance. So it really does have that separation between, okay, this is Iron Menace, but you're entering McTavish Steel. So you kind of get that theming, but also it helps out with knowing what the ride is. I'm kind of curious if people will call it McTavish Steel, um, just from the general population. But I think it's great. And walking into that queue line, you see everything is just great from the smallest details. You have the rusted bars that separate the queue line, and then you have a lot of the theming in the house, and then there's even in the extended queue there's a some kind of truck, some extraterrestrial truck. Not really sure what that was about, but still awesome to have there. Definitely hoping they add some shaded part to the queue because it will get hot there, especially when you're on that pavement and hopefully not waiting too long. But I think that the queue really stands out throughout the moment you enter it to getting in the station. And
Yeah,
also, another thing I want to note is that the ride attendants, they had costumes. So that is something that I never expected Dorney to get. Something I would never expect Six Flags to get. Dorney, Hershey as well. So just seeing that extra level of theming really went a long way.
yeah, for sure. And you say you wonder if the general population is going to call it McTavish Steel or Iron Menace. They're going to refer to it as the straight down drop one or the orange one, and that's what it's going to be
Yeah.
probably. But I think enough people know Iron Menace. It'll probably be on park signage and billboards and all things like that in the area. So I don't think they have anything to worry about. But you know as well as I do. You go to a park, it's like, well, I'm not getting on that one. That one goes straight down, and it's like, no, it doesn't. But this one actually goes beyond straight down, which, as we both know, not mathematically possible, but for the purposes of marketing copy, anything is possible. So you ascend that lift hill, you head down that 95-degree drop, and then take us from there. What happens next through the process of the coaster?
Yeah, so even before you hit that first drop, the view from 100, I think it's 190 feet, just looking straight out into the park, you get a view of every single ride because of its location. And if you look to the right, you get a view of the Lehigh Valley Mountains, which is incredible. Um, so that's honestly probably the best view on any coaster in the Northeast, if I'm being completely honest. Um, and then from there, it's a great journey. You got that 95-degree drop looking down into the melted steel pot, which is something that's pretty cool. I'm hoping they light it up at night because that would look awesome. And then you go into the Immelman, pretty smooth. You get a gray out moment up there, and then the zero G roll, get a little flutter airtime if you're on the egg seats, and then you hit the tilted loop, which is a new element for me. I think it's the first one on any dive coaster.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just a really cool experience there, and then you finish with a corkscrew and then into a helix. So it's a great ride that's very re-rideable because you'll find a different moment that you enjoy more depending on the ride or where you sit.
Yeah, and I mean, they feel like they packed a ton into this tight space that was a former, and I mean, they used a little bit of extra area around it, but largely it was a Vekoma boomerang that was sitting there. And they've packed 2,100 feet of track, 4 inversions, like you mentioned. But you're talking about the seats, like the trains. They've got these new 7 across 3 rows dive coaster trains. You've been on other dive coasters. I'm assuming you've been on Griffin at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, and maybe some other ones. Shikra, maybe too. No Shikra. Oh, that's right. It was closed.
Yeah.
But did you notice a difference in the 7 across trains and kind of how it was moving on the track versus something like a Griffin where it's 10 across?
It felt a little more intense because of the packed car. I feel like you kind of got that freedom to move around when you're in the 10-person train. So it kind of makes each seat different because you have a lot less space to work with.
Okay. Do you have I mean, I'm sure they have groupers telling you where to ride, but how many times did you end up riding on Media Day?
I rode it 3 times.
Okay.
So I did two in the front row, one on the left wing seat, and then one in the middle, and then one in the back right row.
Got it. And between those 2 rows, do you have a preference, or are you just like the views are great wherever, the forces are great wherever? What do you think is the sweet spot for seats if you can, sweet talk a ride operator one day?
Ooh. I think I'm gonna go with front row middle. Just nothing beats that first drop unobstructed. I think it's just the most incredible feeling when you're looking straight down. It's nothing but you, the track, and the pavement. I think that's an awesome experience, and you take every element with it as it goes, and there's no pushing or pulling from the front seat.
Yeah, and it's got those new vest restraints as well, which I think they're kind of polarizing a little bit. Some people hate them, some people love them. I kind of fall in the category of loving them. I feel like they're a lot better than the traditional head-banging hard rubber OTSRs. But what are your thoughts on the vest restraints?
I thought they were comfy. I mean, they're nothing like comfort collars. I feel like, especially with a ride like that, they're definitely needed. And yeah, I think it works well with the theming too. They've got that orange outline, and I think it's a very sleek and cool looking train.
For sure. And it kind of, again, the orientation of this first drop, a lot of times with a dive coaster, you'll make some kind of 90-degree, 180-degree curve out of the station and then ascend the lift hill. This one, you go straight out of the station and you're headed up, and you again have the whole park in front of you. I'm thinking the water park is directly in front of you. Is that close to? Okay, over to the right. Like I said, it's been 10 years since I've been there, and I only have a loose memory of how the park was oriented. Of the 4 inversions or the other elements, do you have a favorite? Was there an inversion you like better than the rest, or a moment that really stood out to you as kind of like the signature moment on this coaster?
I feel like the obvious answer here is the first drop. I mean, you can't beat them. There's nothing else like it at the park. Even in the area, there's nothing like it. I think the closest, I mean, if you count King the Ka, but I think, yeah, the drop really speaks for itself. And then after that, I would say the Immelman is just such a graceful element. Like it really is just like such a wonder to look at.
Yes. Okay. What about the rest of the day itself? I mean, I know typically at these media events, they'll recognize local dignitaries. They'll try to hawk season passes for a little bit, kind of tell the story of the ride. But what was the rest of the media day like for you?
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Dorney Park. They really put out all the stops of this event. Ryan did an amazing job putting everything together. From the moment you got into media day, they had fog machines, which kind of set the mood. Um, it also the weather. I think that helped a lot too. It was a cloudy, overcast day, so I think it made the ride a little more ominous and the day a little more ominous. So if it was a 80-degree and sunny day, it wouldn't have had the same effect. Which obviously marketing didn't have a role in the weather, but I think it helped. Um, and then from there, they had um, a few activations. They had a food spread, which was phenomenal. They had shout out to the funnel cake shrimp. For anybody that doesn't know, it is shrimp deep fried in funnel cake batter, and it is the best shrimp I've ever had.
Okay.
So definitely suggest getting that while you're there. They had a couple other things. They had some Asian chicken tacos. They had a Philadelphia roast pork sandwich, and they also had a few desserts, a couple other food options, and then the other thing they had was the Iron Menace beer. I can't remember the name of the company that brews it, but I also want to shout out them because that is an amazing beer, and it's gonna be even better on a hot summer day after you ride Iron Menace.
Yes. Okay. So I'm looking this up right now. It is okay. It's Lehigh Valley Brewery. That doesn't help me. Internet. Stand by. It's coming. It is Funk Brewing Company in
Yes.
Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. So I'm a huge fan of some of these park specific beers. I know Cedar Point's got one called like the View from the Top or the High Line or something like that for Top Thrill 2. Um, I've tried the Tumbili Lager at King's Dominion. They had a black lager for Dark Coaster last year at Busch Gardens Williamsburg with a local brewing company. So I'm not a huge drinker, but if you're going to slap an amusement park logo on something and call it a beer, I'm going to probably drink it if it's not an IPA because I don't like those. But yeah. So did you get to kind of tool around the rest of the new Steel Yard area? Did you go in the Iron Menace? I think it's the Iron Menace Grill or Steel Yard Gifts or anything like that. How was the or Iron Mill Grill and Bar is what it is called apparently. But how was the merch? How was the rest of the surrounding environment?
Yeah, I went into the gift shop and I got myself an Iron Menace Made to Thrill shirt. So it's a great purchase there. Honestly, one of my first roller coaster shirts. Um, so they have some great options there. They have all the Made to Thrill posters. They have I think like 10 different Iron Menace t-shirts that you can get. So a lot of great options there as well as merch from all the other coasters in the park. The restaurant was not open when we were there,
Okay.
but they had a lot of cool different activations in the Steel Yard area at Media Day. They
Mm-hmm.
had I think it was a steel making um, presentation, which I didn't spend too much time at, but I kind of breezed by it, which was really cool to see. And then it led into the opening ceremony, which they had park personnel speak, and they had someone from Lehigh Valley Tourism
Mm-hmm.
there as well. And then they had also a band playing some music. They were some steel funk band. It sounded really great. Just added to the
Nice.
atmosphere as well. And then yeah, they spoke, and then they did the first drop, and then everybody got their rides.
I love it. And I'll stop you real quick. This is not sponsored content, but I've got Made to Thrill stuff behind me. You've got the Made to Thrill shirt. If you've not seen Josh, I think it's Josh Reichlin is the guy's name. If you've not seen his work in a park, he started doing things that were just like they were amusement park inspired, kind of like this Fury poster here. It just says Charlotte 2015. And then the parks got smart and they're like, okay, well, we'll pay you to do this and you can use our licensing because you're super talented. So his stuff is fantastic. Shirts, posters, pens, patches, whatever. Made to thrill.com. Not sponsored content. Wish it kind of would be, but Josh, let's talk if you happen to be listening. Um, Before we get on real quick to what I'm going to, again, I referenced about 20 minutes ago, that infamous coaster. Let's get your final thoughts on Iron Menace, and what what do you think it's going to do for the crowds and the attendance levels for Dorney Park this year? And again, it's their first roller coaster in almost 2 decades, first new roller coaster. Not only that, it's an extremely thrilling coaster that is unlike anything else in the region. What do you think this is going to do for Dorney Park, not only this season, but moving forward with others in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a huge jumping point for them. I think this is where they turn the corner. I think you saw last year with Hershey opening up Wildcats Revenge, the first RMC in the area. So you're starting to see a little more diversity between all the parks. Six Flags Great Adventure will be adding the Flash label that is coming this summer. They haven't installed track yet at the time of recording this podcast, so props to
No, it went vertical today.
Oh, it did? Oh, wow. Good for them.
It did. It went vertical today, so we're going to date this podcast. It is the end of April, and track is vertical at Six Flags Great Adventure. So maybe by August, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, but I think this just adds a huge level of depth to Hershey's ride portfolio. I think every ride there is so different from the next one, and it really does have a lot to offer when you're doing a dive coaster and the minimum height is 48 inches. I think that is a huge, huge win for the park to get a wider audience. It's not just teenagers looking for thrill rides, it's families, it's anybody who's tall enough that wants to ride it. So I think that this will definitely be a huge win, not only for the park, but for the whole Lehigh Valley area in general. When you get a ride like this, it's definitely a huge achievement, and I think that it's one that's re-rideable, one that people are going to go home and tell their friends, tell their families that you have to get on this. I've never experienced anything like this before. And it's really going to bring some great numbers to the park, and hopefully that adds a little momentum to new coasters on the road, and hopefully it's not another 19-year stretch before we see a brand new one.
We can only hope. And I think Dorney is situated in such a unique geographical area. Not only do you have kind of that whole Lehigh Valley where they're super passionate about their local culture and local landmarks, the minor league hockey team, the Iron Pigs. I mean, that's my minor league baseball. Whatever it is. Baseball.
Lehigh Phantoms is the
Lehigh Phantoms. So I know they're all super passionate about those things, but you're situated right in between both the New York and Philadelphia metros, and there's nothing like this, like you mentioned, at Dorney Park. And their lineup right now with the B&Ms, they've got Hydra, which is fantastic, Talon, which has a cult following online, Steel Force is one of those Morgan hypers that is just fantastic every ride, and I've only rode it once or twice, but yet to have a bad ride on it. Thunderhawk celebrates, I think, 100 years this year. So, I mean, this is a solid lineup for a relatively, I don't want to say neglected, because neglected feels unfair, but it's a smaller park, not as high up in the Cedar Fair hierarchy and food chain. But I think this is absolutely a win for them. And, I've talked with a couple of people, and I think, especially at Cedar Fair parks this year, there's one coaster that's on everybody's mind. It opened in Sandusky, Ohio. We're going to have another podcast with Kyle and Nick, who are at Media Day, about that, so stay tuned for that here soon. But Top Thrill 2, great. Iron Menace, to me, is going to be the sleeper coaster hit of all of 2024. And it's tough to call a B&M dive coaster a sleeper hit, but I think with Dorney having the reputation that it does, this is going to get people to that park. And not just enthusiasts, but like you mentioned, the families with 48-inch tall kids who want to ride that next big coaster. And instead of having to wait to ride Hydra or Talon, I don't know what the height requirement is on Steel Force, but I know that the other B&Ms are 54. This is a 48-inch B&M with a 160 foot tall drop, 152 feet tall drop, 160 feet high. And it's got 4 inversions, and that's something you can't really find with a lot, for a 48-inch height requirement anywhere. So absolute home run by Dorney. I can't wait to get up there and ride it again. Evan, maybe I'll have you, drive that hour and meet me up there, and we'll enjoy one of those. Wait, what are we calling here? What's the funk beer called? The Iron Menace Lager.
Love
So
it.
we will absolutely do this.
Oh yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll meet you there in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and I know, one thing that's really interesting to me is I've seen this on social media is that Dorney has been offering these kind of early season, preseason preview day tickets. They're like $30. That's it. And most of the coasters are open, most of the parks open. I've never really I've seen a park kind of do this with family attractions to kind of get kids and families in the door, but not like the full coaster lineup. So $30, and I think I don't know how much longer that goes. But $30. I mean, you can get in the door, and daily tickets right now, if you buy them online at Dorney Park, are $40. That's nothing. So, especially again in between that Philly and New York metro. Here's the segue though. For just less than a Dorney Park 1-day preseason preview ticket, or slightly less, or for slightly more money, you can get a 1-day ticket. Slightly less money than that, it's $25. And that is what you paid recently to ride arguably one of the roughest coasters I've ever been on. And that is I believe it is now calling itself the Big Apple Coaster at New York, and Vegas. So I'm kind of looking at your eyes. I'm reading the body language here. Was it worth your $25?
I want to preface it and say that it was actually $27 because it was $25 for the coaster itself and then a $2 fee to put it on a plastic card that you would scan to get into the ride. So $27 is your value, and that's a strong word.
Okay. So again, for just $2 more, you can get an early season ticket to Dorney Park. Instead, you happen to be in Vegas for a music festival. Being the good coaster enthusiast you are, you made the short walk up the strip to New York, from your hotel. And I asked you what was going through your mind for Iron Menace. What was going through your mind when you saw Manhattan Express, Big Apple Coaster, roller coaster, whatever we're calling it these days?
I mean, it does add a lot of character to the hotel. I'll put it at that. No hotel on the strip can offer that. So I do think that there is something to say about having a coaster on top of your hotel, and then being from the New York area, seeing that fake skyline with the coaster in front of it was pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, once you take that journey, every step you think you're getting closer to the ride, you're actually getting further away. So you pass through the restaurants, through the casino, through the arcade, and then you finally get to
up the stairs through the queue line. I did this. I was at a buddy's bachelor party 2 or 3 years ago, and shout out to Clint. He actually listens to the podcast. So we were out there for his bachelor party, and I somehow commandeered a group of our friends on his bachelor party. So this was a hilarious move by me. But I was like, hey, let's go all ride the New York, coaster together. And they're like, that sounds fun. And I've heard in the past, before these new Premier Rides trains with the comfort collars, I've heard it was notoriously rough. And if it was notoriously rough before, I have no idea if it's rough now, even with those trains. And Togo doesn't have any other U.S. coasters left, I don't think, and that's probably for good reason. But to me, it just it jackhammered me a little bit. It was just not the greatest ride experience. But do you think you have a similar opinion? Was it just for $25 you had a chiropractic adjustment?
I mean, it was probably the roughest steel coaster I've been on. Okay. And I mean, there were some. I do have to say there were some pretty good moments when there was straight track, but any slight movement of the car really resulted in just not a great experience. And I was second row too. I can't even imagine what it was like in the back seat.
it wasn't great. That's where I was sitting, was the very back row, and we came off. I think it might have been the second or third drop, and I just valleyed, and I was like, just jerked right into the seat. But I feel like as a coaster enthusiast in Vegas, good for you for doing it. There are, I would say, far worse coaster enthusiast things you can do in Vegas. And this is coming from the guy who last year went to Vegas for a work trip, was staying off the strip right down the road from the Las Vegas Mini Grand Prix, and paid $12 to ride the dragon coaster there, called Piff the Magic Dragon, after the America's Got Talent performer. And the caveat being here, you could buy tickets at this place. Each attraction they had was operated on tickets, and so one ticket was $12. It was half a ticket to ride Piff the Magic Dragon, which I did in broad daylight on like an afternoon. I was the only person there, and I had to, like, walk of shame, give my ticket to the ride op at Piff the Magic Dragon. And she's like, "Do you want to ride it again? You have a ticket," because it's only half a ticket to ride the coaster. So, and I said, "No, you can just keep it. It's okay. I don't need to ride it again." And she looked at me like really confused. And I was like, "Yeah, this hobby leads me to some weird places." So, but yeah, I think between New York, and Circus Circus, so the what's the literary term here? It's not alliteration. It's I don't know. Whatever it is, repeating yourself. So maybe alliteration. I don't know. It's been a while since I've been in school, but the duplicative hotel names with roller coasters, you can do a lot better coaster wise. I don't know how much. I mean, not in Vegas, but you can do a lot better coaster wise. But if you're there, you might as well get a credit or two, even if it costs less than an entire day at Dorney Park.
It's insane. It's I wanted to get the Circus while I was there, but we just didn't have the time. But I don't know if what's the ride there?
You've got you got El Loco and Canyon Blaster.
Okay, I've heard El Loco's decent.
El Loco was fun. I did that too. And Canyon Blaster is it's an indoor arrow that isn't, I don't think, maintained to the standards of major amusement park arrows. I mean, I'm sure they maintain it and do a good job, but it was a little rough.
Yeah, I mean, from a theme park perspective, I also got to the Sphere. So yes, that is one of the coolest experience that I've ever had, non-theme park related.
And you saw the what was it? It's like the world.
Yeah,
postcards from the world.
From Earth.
How was that?
It's unbelievable. I've been to IMAXs at like a local science center, and this was that times infinity. It was the most stunning screen that I've ever saw. It was like super ultra 4K. The seats vibrated, which caught me off guard. So low key a simulator. And yeah, I mean, it's just like a 50-minute show. Really good storyline, and the visuals were just incredible.
Let me ask you this, and I just want to do a real quick cost comparison. What was your cost to go into the Sphere for Postcards from Earth versus what you paid to go on Big Apple Coaster?
I believe the Sphere was $80 with fees.
Okay, so it felt worth it, which was
absolutely good.
Yeah. Okay, good. So again, Sphere wasn't open last time I was in Vegas, but all the videos I've seen look amazing, and it's I feel like theme park adjacent enough as a lot of things in Vegas are. So if you're in Vegas, check out the Sphere. Check out maybe one of the coasters on the Strip if you feel like it. If not, whatever. The SpongeBob Dark Ride looks fun, and Circus Circus, go do that. So, but don't go to Piff the Magic Dragon if you don't have to. Unless you're just like a credit counting geek, and I don't know what to tell you at that point. I just know from experience they're going to look at you funny if you only want to ride the coaster one time. That's all. But Evan, before we wrap this up, anything else you want to talk about? Iron Menace, Las Vegas. Where are you headed next on your travels? What's on your agenda this upcoming coaster season?
I mean, the glaring one right now is the Flash: A Great Adventure, and hopefully summer means sooner than August. Fingers crossed. Definitely looking to get on that soon. I loved my trip to Hershey last year for Wildcats Revenge. I've heard great things about the retrack on also Wildcat at Lake Compounds. So it's been a few years since I've been to that park. It's a great charming park. It's a probably a good half day um, park as well. Boulder Dash is a great ride. I haven't gotten on the Skyrocket 2 there yet, so it's definitely one I'm hoping to get to this summer. Um, yeah, so definitely a
Sweet.
great time to be in the region.
Absolutely. I'm jealous. I mean, I've got Carowinds here, and Carowinds is great. I have Fury and Copperhead Strike literally almost in my backyard. My backyard's 35 minutes long. Um, but yeah, other than that, it's a solid 4 hours plus to Kings Dominion, Busch Gardens, Dollywood, Six Flags Over Georgia. They're all kind of in that 4 to 5 hour radius, and maybe I'll get down there. Maybe I'll get up there. Who knows? Some of these, but again, like you said, really good time to be up in the Northeast. Really good time for new coasters, and I will say, if you're looking for the latest and greatest coaster news, head to coaster101.com if you prefer the written word to read Evan's review on Iron Menace or Nick and Kyle's review of Top Thrill 2. We've also got all sorts of stuff on Coaster 101, so go check that out. We're also at Coaster 101 everywhere social media can be found, Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly Twitter, Twitter always, formerly X, I don't know, TikTok, everywhere you can find social media, we're there. So give it a look. If you're listening, make sure you're liking, rating, reviewing, subscribing, and telling your friends to listen, because who doesn't want to hear nerds talk about roller coasters, really at its core? And if you're looking to also build upon that nerddom, we've got a great TeePublic shop with some coaster inspired designs, some from me, who is an amateur graphic designer, and others from Kyle Linder on our team, who's a professional graphic designer. You can decide which ones you like better. That's the way it goes. And last but certainly not least, I want to shout out Justin Mabry of JMMD Entertainment for our theme music. It's been going strong for almost 150 episodes now. So Justin and team, thank you for that. Evan, any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Go ride Iron Menace. Go ride the only dive coaster in the Northeast. It's a launching point for Cedar Fair, launching point for Dorney, and it's really gonna turn the corner for them. And I think it's one of the best coasters in the Northeast and one of the best dives out there.
And you have heard it from a certified Northeasterner, person from the Northeast. Whatever Evan is, you've heard it from him. He knows local knowledge. Go ride Iron Menace. Go visit Dorney Park. Don't go to Las Vegas. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Coaster 101 podcast, and we will talk to y'all again soon. See ya.